This is Pam. Have you ever been told that it's all in your head? Maybe you've been suffering with some symptoms, scary symptoms, and you're kind of worried about them. And so you're going to different practitioners and trying to find an answer. You get a lot of tests done, and you find that your tests are showing that you're a perfectly healthy person. And so your doctor or your practitioner will say, there's nothing wrong. You're perfectly healthy. And then if you continue to suffer and your symptoms are getting worse, some of us get these awful labels that it's all in our head, that basically we need to see a counselor, that maybe we're kind of, dealing with stress and we're making stuff up because we want attention. There's actual medical terms for this, and it's so insulting and it's so difficult. And not all practitioners do this, but definitely some will do this. So today we're going to talk about this dilemma that we can find ourselves in, and what we can do to take back charge of our health, to actually play an active role in our healthcare, and to recover. If we haven't met, my name is Pam Bartha, and I'm the author of Become a Wellness Champion and the founder of Live Disease Free. That was me 35 years ago. Well, in a way it was, in a way it wasn't. So I was actually diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and I had such a severe attack of MS that I lost all vision in my left eye. So I got an MS diagnosis pretty quickly. But for many of my students, they share that it takes years to get a proper diagnosis. And so some of us in that process of all that time, we can end up being kind of insinuated from our practitioners that we're kind of making it up, that we want attention, that we're a hypochondriac, and nothing could be further from the truth. And it's so frustrating because we're really worried and we really want to get answers, and that's how we get brushed off. So that is the fears. And I actually talked to 4 people today, and it's just shocking. So one person, she's been having vertigo. She's in the hospital in and out, and everybody's doing tests on her and they can't figure it out. Another person that I was talking to was sharing that she has been asking her doctor, like, I'm having all of these awful symptoms. Is there any way it could be parasites? I'm with a lot of animals. And the doctor's like, no, you wouldn't have any parasites because you live in Canada. We don't have parasites in Canada. And then another student just shared that it's just been devastating, like, being just put on these disease modifying drugs, going from one to the next, and they're not working. They're not helping her. She's had a longer than she's ever had before, an MS flare, an MS attack, and life, it's just been devastating to her, this whole situation that she's dealing with. And then finally, another person that I talked to today, and like, she has been ostracized by the medical community, like, for suggesting that, parasites could be involved. And so it's a really difficult situation that we can get ourselves in. And I'm going to give you some tools today as to how to get out of this difficult situation, how to take back charge, and how to actually get results and how to recover. Because if you want to change the existing system that we are in right now, it isn't going to work. It's going to cost you a lot of money. It's going to be super frustrating. It's going to be a lot of heartache and a lot of pain and agony. It's just not even worth it. So what you can do is you can do some proactive, important things where you are actually getting results in the most cost-effective way. And we're going to talk about the steps that the wellness champions are taking to recover from chronic diseases. So when we do seek out attention from our doctors, like, we can have some symptoms and we can kind of be a little scared. Like, we could think like, oh, I'm dealing with these scary symptoms. Could it be MS? Could it be another neurological disease? Could I have cancer? Because like right now, I think it was the United Nations, they have on their website that cancer is going to increase by 77% over the next, or by 2050. So how do they know that, right? I have no idea. So we can become really frustrated as we are going from practitioner to practitioner. We might start with our medical practitioners, and we go to integrative practitioners. We might spend a lot of money on testing and on supplements, and we're still sick, and we're just not exactly sure why we're not getting the answers. And it really impacts our quality of life, and it really prevents us from doing a lot of things that we want. And just the stress is absolutely awful. So Another issue is that a lot of people get misdiagnosed, right? So they might be diagnosed with MS or a different condition. And I've talked about this before. One of my previous articles and videos, you can go check them out at livediseasefree.com, where I talk about how it takes years for some people to get a diagnosis. Marissa, who works with us, it took her years to get a diagnosis. And she was one of those that were accused of like, it's all in your head for a while until they finally gave her an MS diagnosis. And she was really sick. She couldn't care for her family. She was like on the couch. She couldn't take care of her home. And now she's a health coach. Now she's helping others to recover from chronic diseases like MS and others. So for the vast majority of people, it's not in our head. It's just that our doctors don't know. And a really good, humble practitioner will say, I'm sorry, but I just don't know. We'll keep searching, but we don't know. We don't know everything. And that would be a really honest answer. Instead of saying that, you know, you need to go see a counselor, you need to go see a psychiatrist. And so it is true that our healthcare professionals, they really have not been trained in parasites. I should say the training that they've had in parasites is that they're told that we don't have parasites in developed countries, that their patients would have to go to a third world or underdeveloped country to get parasites. And the crazy thing is in those countries, they treat parasites and they don't treat parasites in the developed countries. Why is that? We're going to talk about that. It's true that parasites can cause any symptom in the body. Any type of symptom that you're dealing with could be caused by parasites. We know that diseases are caused by parasites and also by nutritional deficiencies and also by really awful toxins. So like if you're where there's some kind of a toxic dump from some kind of industry or there's radioactive toxins, etc. But most of us are not living in that environment. Most of us do not have a lot of toxins that are present. So then nutritional deficiencies, we can consider that. And we know that most of us live in developed countries where we have lots of nutrition. So for the vast majority of us, when we're dealing with symptoms, whether they're neurological, whether they're gut symptoms, whether they're, head like memory or mood or lack of energy, there's countless symptoms, liver issues, kidney issues, any kind of lung issues. That is caused by different types of parasites. And a parasite is any microbe that lives in your body and causes you harm. So that could be worms, and it could be bacteria, it could be protists, it could be fungi. Those are the 4 bigger classes of different types of infections. And a parasite, again, is something that's living inside of you and causing you harm. They cause inflammation, right? And we talked about that in our previous lecture or talks and also my blog posts. And we talked about how they cause oxidative stress. Our immune system is producing oxygen type species to fight. It's like little oxygen mobs to fight these parasites. But as I mentioned, our practitioners believe that you can't have parasites unless you travel out of country to a different country where they do have parasites. Well, the truth of the matter is that parasites are present in our soil. They're present in our water. And yes, most of us should have treated water where we have treated so that there won't be parasites in our water. If you have well water, please understand you can have parasites in your water and you should treat it. But we can also get parasites from our pets. So it's interesting, like I've gotten back into horses. I'm so thankful. It's been many, many years since I was 20 years old. And, working with, veterinarians and different people that are catching me up to speed with training, they're like, we treat horses every 3 to 4 months. We treat our dogs for parasites every 3 to 4 months. Any kind of kitten, cat, you should be treating them regularly for parasites. But we don't treat ourselves for parasites. And when we're around animals that have parasites, you bet we can get parasites from them. We can get parasites from working in our soil, landscaping, gardening. We can get parasites from shopping carts. Maybe since COVID, there was a time when they were disinfecting everything for a while. But normally there's been studies showing that there's like sometimes fecal matter on shopping cart handles. Door handles can have parasites. Like we can eat in restaurants. Somebody could prepare our food and they went to the bathroom and they didn't wash their hands. So we don't have to be paranoid, but we have to understand that parasites are part of life, and we don't have to travel out of country. And so it's really important to understand that. And we have to reprogram ourselves and our doctors also. And we can't reprogram our healthcare system. But what it comes to again is that I'm from the generation where when I was healthy up until 28, and I thought, I'm healthy, I'm always going to be healthy. And if I ever get sick, my doctor will fix me. And then I realized once I got sick, he can't fix me. Like, he gave me this label of an incurable disease of MS and that I'm going to be completely disabled and in a wheelchair in a few years. And yeah, I'd be a burden to my husband. I wouldn't be able to raise my kids. And I was like, that's not what I want for my life. And I had no idea what God had in store. And I give him all the glory for the success in my life because I begged for help. And I really encourage you, if you have a faith, just continue to beg for help because he's very, very faithful. So I was able to learn about Candida back in the 1980s. Doctors were talking about that. Then I learned about the Lyme infections, the vector-borne infections that cause Lyme disease. And then more recently, within the last 7 to 10 years, we learned more about the larger parasites, the flukes and the tapeworms and the roundworms. And we talk about parasites, like our naturopaths can say, yeah, we could have parasites and we could use herbs like the wormwood and black walnut and cloves, different blends like that, thinking that we're getting rid of them. But from personal experience and from working with hundreds of students, the herbs are helpful for some parasites, but they are not enough to treat the really big parasites, and they're not enough to treat the parasites that have moved into tissues, into organs, and into our central nervous system. So our doctors, we can't fault them, and even our naturopaths. They might know about Lyme, they might know about mold, but they really don't know, the vast majority of them, about the larger parasites. They don't have good tests. And so this is a skill that has been lost. I believe that probably, the 1900s, they knew more about parasites than they do now, like maybe the early 1900s. And it's been a lost skill. And it's really interesting that, up until like the late 1800s, the early 1900s, up to 1950, 1960, all of these different researchers and doctors, and I've shared lots of research on our live events and on our website, and they were trying to find out which infections were causing which diseases. And then all of a sudden in the 1960s, the whole healthcare approach shifted from infectious diseases to autoimmune diseases. So what happened there is that all of a sudden, we don't talk about infections. We don't care to look for parasites. We just, oh, it's your immune system. Your immune system is attacking itself for no reason. Oh, we've got to give you immunosuppressive drugs. We have to suppress your lymphocytes, your B cells, your T cells. Like, it's insane. You need your immune system to protect you from infection. But no, we're suppressing it. And that makes us weaker, more susceptible to other parasites and other diseases. So when we're on these immunosuppressive drugs for years, then we end up with not just one disease, but 3 to 5 diseases. And these drugs are a lot more lucrative than treating parasites. And so this is the dilemma we're in right now, is that our healthcare system has been hijacked. I'm not against pharmaceutical products. I'm not against doctors. I understand that, if you've been to school for 10 years and you've learned a certain way of thinking, that is how you're going to think. But you need to go back to common sense. So now we're going to swing into what do we do when we're in this dilemma, when we've been going from practitioner to practitioner and we've, number one, trying to get a diagnosis. Maybe we haven't gotten one yet, but then maybe we did get one and now we're taking all of these disease-modifying drugs and we're becoming more and more disabled. I want to ask you, if there's just relapsing remitting MS and there's progressive MS, and we're just talking about one disease right now, but if there's just those 2 variations of MS, why do we need so many different types of MS drugs? If they are effective, then you might use, and if they were different diseases, if relapsing remitting was a different disease than progressive MS, then you might need 2 drugs at the most to cure multiple sclerosis. But they're not a cure. And that's why we're using so many different disease modifying, immunosuppressive, and the key word here is maintenance drugs, because they want us to take them for the rest of our life or as long as our body can handle it, because that way these drugs are very expensive, $100,000 to $200,000 a year per person. Great gig. So if we treated parasites, we would not have the healthcare system. We would not have to spend billions of dollars on cancer. I talked about cancer last week. You can go back onto livediseasefree.com. You're going to see my condensed notes. You're going to see the shorter video, and you're going to see how many parasite drugs treat cancer. They're cheap. There's no patent on them that's run out. And so it's like, well, and then there's all of these new articles that are talking about, oh, you know, this parasite drug is a promising new drug for cancer. This other parasite drug is a promising new drug for cancer. When for years they've known that these parasite drugs treat cancer. I mean, not our doctors have known, but it's very prevalent in the research, in the medical research. So researchers, pretty easy to find, but you got to look for it. You got to actually type in PubMed or in a different search engine, you have to type in cancer and albendazole, cancer and ivermectin, cancer and praziquantel, and you'll see that past and present, there's a lot of scientific papers showing that these parasite drugs have been known to treat cancer, because cancer is an infectious disease. It's caused by different types of parasites, just like any autoimmune diseases. Different parasites cause different diseases. So we can just keep being frustrated, and we can just keep going back to the practitioners and just keep getting insulted with, it's all in your head. You need to go see a psychiatrist. You need to go see a counselor. Or we can go, okay, enough of that. That's just too hard on me. And I'm just going to start to take charge of my health. I'm going to take responsibility for my health. And yes, you can. I know from my generation, it's like, no, that's the doctor's job. You cannot pretend to be a doctor. I'm not pretending to be a doctor. I'm pretending to be my own, not pretending. I am my own health advocate. I'm the director of my health, because your health is your greatest asset. You cannot afford to leave your health solely in the hands of any one healthcare professional. You must play an active role in your healthcare. That is something that we should teach in schools to our kids. And I used to be a school teacher. High school, this is a life skill that I teach to my students, how to recover, how to treat, and then how to periodically make sure we never end up with a parasitic infestation again. So it's really, really important that we take on that responsibility. And it's different. It's not something that many of us, especially from my generation, I'm in my 60s, and so that was our mentality. It was like, no, the doctor's got to fix you. So it's time for change. It's really time for a new approach in healthcare. And we know that's not going to come from the healthcare professionals that are narrow-minded, and some of them are very arrogant, and some of them are very nice. Like I had a GP, he retired. I think he had health issues, but he was always so humble. And he would always say, we just don't know. We don't know what causes this. We don't know what causes that. That is a good healthcare professional. And he would be like, I'm willing to work with you. If it's safe, if it's not going to hurt you, and if it makes sense, I'm willing to work with you. So those are really good doctors. And those are doctors that really do care, whether they're a naturopath, whether they're an MD, whether they're a functional medicine doctor. And there are doctors out there. There are doctors out there that want to treat and want to learn about parasites, but it's not part of their association that they're in, and they're not getting that training. And so this is where we, as the foot soldiers, we have to really plant seeds for starters, only with the practitioners that are open, only with the practitioners that are not going to make us feel bad. If somebody's narrow-minded and closed-minded and arrogant, it's just thanks, but no thanks. Find somebody who is going to serve you, somebody who's going to be at least kind and open and just humble, right? That's what we want. And they are out there for sure. I've heard almost everything. I even heard from one of our students is that her neurologist said, if you were my daughter, I would pin you down to the ground and I would force the disease modifying drug on you. And like, that is really awful. So we've had years ago when we started, probably 10 years ago, we had a lot of students that would even just suggest, to their, especially the specialists, that they might be dealing with infections or parasites, and they would leave their office crying. But we are seeing a change. We are seeing that a lot of practitioners are more open. They're just more, in a general sense, they're just a lot better. But there are still some that are difficult for sure. So this is where we have to kind of know we can't change the system, but we can take matters into our own hands. We definitely can recover, but we have to take responsibility. We have to understand that we're a healthy person. We might be infested with parasites, but deep down, when you take all those parasites away, we are a strong and healthy person. And that's all we're dealing with, is we're dealing with parasites. We could have some nutritional deficiencies, often because of the parasites, but generally we're a healthy person. And the sooner we treat the parasites, the easier they are to treat and the quicker our recovery will be. And so we have to understand that our immune system is really important for us. It's incredibly designed to support our health. It is our military, it is our army, it is the soldiers that protect us from all these different types of infections. And we do not want to suppress our immune system. We do not want to kill our B cells and our T cells. What we want to do is we want to support them. We want to take the pressure off. We want to decrease the burden of parasites and the burden of the toxins the parasites produce. We want to decrease that enough so that we start to feel relief and that our immune system starts to have relief. So it's very important to protect our immune system and to support our immune system, because it is going to keep us alive for many, many years. And we do this through our Live Disease-Free plan. So I'm going to shift into the plan and how the wellness champions are recovering from incurable, supposedly incurable diseases, which are just caused by parasites. So number one is that I've shared on previous articles and again, videos. You can go to livediseasefree.com and you'll see I talk about how these infections, they produce a lot of inflammation and oxidative stress. Our immune system's working hard. Their favorite food is carbohydrates and simple sugars. That is their favorite source of energy. So when we're infested and we decrease the carbs enough, we notice a lot of symptom improvements. And that means the inflammation is starting to go down. We're starting to promote immune modulation naturally. So the immune system is still there. We're not suppressing it. We're not hurting it anyway. We're just taking some of the pressure off. Think about your soldiers. They're just overwhelmed. The fight is unfair. It's like totally out of balance. The enemy is winning. So you're starting to like take away the food from the enemy. And so the enemy is going to be weaker and it's not going to die. It can still live on your normal blood sugar level, but it's going to be less active. The enemies will be less active. They'll produce less poisons. They're less virulent, and you're going to start to notice less inflammation. The immune system will do less oxidative stress, and you will notice you'll start feeling better. This can be in the form of the bladder is the first one that we notice with a lot of people. When their carbs are low enough, their bladder function improves tremendously. They don't have to get up 6 times a night. They might get up once or twice. That can happen in a week or two. Then they're starting to sleep better. Then they're starting to have more energy. And then they're starting to feel happier. We notice also that we can have tremendous decreases in things like spasticity, where we have the cramping when our carbs are low enough. We can also notice that neuropathy can really decrease, and on and on and on. Depression can decrease, like you can feel happier. So all of these symptoms from the parasites and the toxins they produce, they're going to decrease when you decrease the food to those parasites. That's really important because there is no magic cure for these parasites. We don't have good tests, so we need to use strategy in order to weaken them and then treat them. And that really helps us to recover more quickly and to tolerate the treatment so that we can treat more aggressively. So that's the first step, is to decrease the food to the parasites. The second step is to support our immune system. We want to make sure that we are building up our immune system. So we are taking binders to decrease the toxins in our gut and also in our blood. So we're decreasing the poisons. We're getting our bowels moving every day. So that's also going to decrease the toxins. We're making sure we're sleeping. So when we have parasites, we can have a hard time falling asleep. We can wake up throughout the night. We can have terrible insomnia. So we use over-the-counter aids to combat the sleep issues, the insomnia, but also the constipation issues. So we're opening up the detox pathways. We're decreasing the burden of toxins. We are also making sure we're having more sleep so our immune system is stronger. If we're sleep deprived, our immune system is not going to help us the way that it should. And then, so those are the three main things we do before we start treating is getting the carbs low enough, having a lot of symptom improvements. We follow the Live Disease-Free diet. You can find that on our website, livediseasefree.com. It's free. The guidelines are there. It's under research, and you'll see the Live Disease-Free diet guidelines. So there's a short video. There's a little cheat sheet you put in your kitchen. There's some videos on what I eat for different meals. And you want to get your carbs down low enough to the 30 to 40 total grams of carbs per day. So not net, but total. And when you get in that target zone, that's where you really notice decreased inflammation and huge improvements in symptoms. Then we're ready to start treating. And so then what we do is we start, as we are getting some samples from our practitioners to get energy tested of the parasite drugs, we can energy test different herbs, parasite herbs, and also the parasite drugs. We're also using oxygen therapy. So we're using a layering of therapies to get rid of a parasitic infestation because they're super hardy in our body. Our body is the perfect growing environment, and they move into our tissues. They're not just in the gut. When we have scary symptoms, neurological symptoms, they've moved into different tissues and very often into the central nervous system. Even with things like migraine headaches, we can have parasites in the central nervous system. A lot of people that are even over 50 or people that have Crohn's disease, they can have these lesions, which are pockets of infection, pockets of these parasites in their central nervous system. So it's not just multiple sclerosis. Things have changed a lot with MS. They're like, well, in order to have MS, you've got to have lesions in this area and this area. And then years later, well, no, they could have lesions in this area and this area also. And then later, oh, well, no, they could actually have lesions in these other areas too. And so we can get these people on these disease-modifying drugs quicker. So this is how things have been progressing with MS, with multiple sclerosis. It's to me, it's a gong show. It really is. It's the more years I'm dealing with this, the more I see it's just absolutely awful. And there will come a day when we'll look back and we'll say, this is not just for MS, but for many different diseases. Like, it's just brutal how we treated these people with all of these toxic drugs that weren't in the best interest of the patient, that were more in the best interest of industry and companies. So as we are, getting ready to treat and we're getting samples and we're working with our practitioner and trying to figure out which of the parasite drugs test best for us through energy testing, then we can also start to use the oxygen therapies at that time. We might be using things like raw garlic and different herbs just to start to decrease the parasites. But really, we have found that when we use the parasite drugs in combination with antimicrobial herbs, in combination with oxidizing agents, and I do have a favorite one that I cannot talk about here. You can find that on my website. If you just do like oxygen therapies for treating parasites, you'll find our post, and there you'll be able to learn more about that. So that's what we do. So again, I'm going to share just a couple of successes that just came in yesterday. For time's sake, I'll just leave it to like 4 or 5. And it just helps you to see like some of these students are just, getting ready to treat and others are in the treatment phase. And so you kind of get a taste of what it's like to recover from these parasitic infestations. So the first student shared, the update is that my energy, my balance, my movement, and pain issues are much better since last week. Now that's really, really huge. And I believe that she is not really treating much. If anything, herbs, I don't believe that she's using a lot of the parasite drugs yet. So energy, balance, and movement and pain issues have been much better since last week. Like, that is 1 week's difference. When you're on the disease-modifying drugs, you don't notice those kind of changes in 1 week. And I'm doing really well with the diet, and eating regularly. So no, she's just actually just in the prep phase. She's getting ready to treat. And I'm feeling, and I'm finally have this down. So she has the diet in place. And these are the improvements in inflammation that we're seeing. Again, those are huge improvements in inflammation, decreased inflammation, just by not feeding the parasites so much. And she's working on daily bowel movements. And she said, I've been getting more sun, working in the garden more too. And isn't that what we want? Isn't that we want to be outside? We want to be enjoying. I love being outside. So another student shared that today I'm starting a parasite treatment cycle. So she's done a few already. And she says, and I think that I'm going to be adding in some oral CD also soon. And she basically said that she does not, I just want to make sure I have this right here. Okay, I'm getting her mixed up with another student here. But basically, this student shared that she's starting this next treatment cycle, and she literally is symptom free. So she works in the medical community. We have a lot of nurses, and we have an MD right now in the program. We have pharmacists in the program. We've had chiropractors in the program, physiotherapists. They can't get better with our standard of care, but they can get better when they treat the parasites. And so that's what she's doing. So she literally is symptom free. And she's like, okay, so I've been symptom free for like the last month, and I've done a few treatment cycles. Like, how many more treatment cycles should I do? Because I don't want to continue doing them if I don't need to. So what we recommend is that when you become completely symptom free, to maybe do 1 or 2 treatment cycles after that, because we do know that especially the bigger worms, they can lay hundreds of thousands of eggs in a day. They hide under biofilms. There can be larvae and eggs hiding in the body that will hatch. But you'll know, like, if you do 1 or 2 treatment cycles past when you're completely symptom free, and you notice that if you start eating a little bit more carbs and stop treating, and you have a little bit of gut issues, then you know you need to do a little bit more. So it does take time to treat. And then another student shared, when I started my 4th course of, let me just make sure I have the right one. Yes. When I started my 4th course of parasite treatments, my legs felt better. For example, I no longer have swelling, and they feel normal. And they have felt normal since I started on this one parasite drug, which has now been 6 days. So that's really hopeful, this person shared. And then also my bowel movements are well formed at least once a day. And he's also using, so like we're using, I've talked about this before, oxy powder, which really works well for our students, better than a lot of other supplements to promote regularity. You can find that on our website, livediseasefree.com. It's just ozonated magnesium. And his sleep has also improved. He is getting 8 hours of sleep, but he definitely needs to go to bed earlier, and that's something we've been addressing, because the sleep before midnight is much greater quality for healing. So, but he is getting at least 8 hours of sleep per night, which is great. And he's been so strong, like he still is treating, he still has a ways to go, but he's able to start jogging again, which is amazing. So this student does not have multiple sclerosis. He found us, and he was dealing with a lot of really scary symptoms, knowing that he would be getting a diagnosis within however long it takes them to get a diagnosis, but he didn't want the diagnosis. So he's like, I believe it's parasites. So he went to work treating, and his life has completely changed. And he said, and so I love to run on a regular basis. I'm feeling stronger while doing that. So when we have a lot of parasites, we can't exercise a lot. Like it just zaps our energy, and it makes us weaker and weaker. So one lady I was talking to, she was an aerobic instructor years ago, and now she's had MS for years. And the MS kind of steals your energy and steals your ability to exercise. So she'll be getting that back as she starts to treat the parasites. But that's just like with this one student here. Another student shared, I'm sleeping 7+ hours per night. So again, this is part of the prep phase. We want to get the sleep in place, daily bowel movements, and then also carbs are low enough. And she said, I'm feeling like I'm doing really well. My spirits are very high, feeling very hopeful. I'm feeling stronger mentally than I have felt in years, very determined to recover. So, this is a student who, like, sometimes we don't have the support from our medical community, but sometimes we don't have the support from our family. They love us very much, but they might feel that the disease modifying drugs are the answer. And so this one student has had a lot of disability, and she's kind of like, the hare and the tortoise, like the rabbit and the turtle. And the turtle wins the race because the turtle is just consistently going. So maybe that's you. Maybe you've been dealing with sickness for a long time and you're like, is this going to work for me? Like, I literally have been sick and I haven't been able to, I've been using a wheelchair for 5 years or 10 years. And maybe this just won't work for me. Maybe I just have to just stick with this standard of care. And all I can share with you is that this one student, she is just like moving forward every month, every week she's moving forward. She just finished a course and she hasn't taken a course for years. She's finding she has more balance, and she's going very slowly because that's all that she can tolerate, and she doesn't have a lot of support from her loved ones. So she's an inspiration. It's like, if she can do it, you can do it too also. And then another student shared, another student shared, I'll just go to this last one. So my symptoms haven't improved completely, but I'm moving in the right direction and I am still climbing the stairs. So when I climb the stairs, my legs still feel weak and my lungs are winded, but I can do it. And my days are quite full and I'm able to get quite a bit done. So this student, she doesn't have multiple sclerosis, but she has another really serious condition where she has a lot of inflammation in her esophagus, a lot of spasms. So, like, sometimes we can get spasms in our calves, but she has them in her esophagus. And so when she started just a few weeks ago, she was at risk of being on a feeding tube because eventually the spasms won't allow you to eat anymore. But now she can eat food. And now she's actually able to get quite a bit done around the home. And she's just starting to treat. So just the prep phase that she's not, oh, and I should say too, that she's been sending some amazing worm pictures. So I have hundreds and hundreds of worm pictures. And the last one she shared, it's over 2 feet long. So you would, and this is a crazy thing, is that you think that if you have inflammation in your esophagus, that how is that connected to your intestines? Well, it is. The base camp of the parasites are in your gut, are in your intestines. And so you really have to address that first. And that will take a lot of pressure off your immune system so that your immune system can be more involved in other parts of the body. So for her, she's able to eat now. Not perfectly, still bothers her, but she can eat. She's out of the danger zone. She's able to keep up with her family, and she's tired when walking up the steps. But when you're passing 2-foot worms, they can cause you to feel really, really tired. And so she's just literally starting to treat, which is so exciting. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of like where the students are at. Like right now we have a lot of newer students that are joining. Like we kind of have like a flux of people come in and they work through the program. And it's really neat because it's like they're starting at different times, but when you start, like, you're like, oh, is this going to work for me? Maybe it's not going to work for me, but then you hear all these successes from other students ahead of you. And so that excites you and it motivates you. And then as you start having your symptom improvements, you start sharing your successes. And that is like people pulling each other out of the pit of misery, of pain and agony, of chronic disease. And it's so beautiful. I'm so honored to support these students. They are my heroes. We always call them the leaders, the trailblazers, the forward thinkers, because they are doing something that the vast majority of people in the world are not doing. They are not treating the cause. Some people just are forward thinkers. They just go, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. And I'm going to do that. And they do that, they get their life back. And because they do that, that's how we get change. So another way we can get change is if you enjoy what I share every week, if you help me to get the word out by just sharing and liking, you can subscribe to YouTube and Facebook. It's really important, especially if you're on Facebook, that you share this because I'm from Canada, and the deal between my Canadian government and Facebook is that Facebook is not going to share Canadian content. And so we've seen a huge decline in people being able to see our really, really important work. So you can, if you share it, that helps other people to see it. And I've had people share just in the last couple of weeks, like one student that joined, he's like, I have spent 4 years researching. I've gone through all of the medical journals. I've looked and looked and looked, and this is in Europe, and I've never seen one indication, like in the medical area, that parasites could be causing the disease I'm dealing with, multiple sclerosis. He said, if I would have had any inkling that parasites were causing this disease, I would have researched it further. But you're the first that gave me this clue. So that's just insane when you, but that's why our healthcare system have been so tied up where, like I was talking to somebody today too, like the whole pathology discipline, the profession of pathologists, it's very small, right? Doctors cannot have microscopes in their offices anymore. They're not allowed to look under the microscope to look for infections. So when the deeper you go into this, the more awful it is. But so this is where, in conclusion, I'll go to your questions and your comments, but it's like you have to either hang on in that frustration and the insults of, it's all in your head. You need to see a counselor, keep going back, can't find what's wrong. You're perfectly healthy. All your blood work is perfectly healthy. You can continue down that path and be frustrated and just get sicker and sicker, even from the stress. Or you can say, okay, enough of that. This is not working. I'm going to take charge of my health. There are other people that are doing this. There are other wellness champions that are doing this, and I'm going to treat the cause. This makes perfect sense. If you think that parasites could be the cause of what you're dealing with, make sure to watch my masterclass training. It'll go into the steps of this program a lot deeper. And then if you finish that and you're like, okay, this is finally the answer. And if you don't have support from a doctor or practitioner of any kind, then make sure to fill out the form, and you can book a time to chat with me to see if the Live Disease-Free plan is a good fit for you, because that's what we help people do. We help you to access the treatments, to access everything that you need to treat, to build. We help you to build a game plan. We help you teach you how to play that active role in your healthcare. And then you'll find that once you're better, once you've treated the parasites well enough, then you will hardly ever need practitioners, because you can stay out of that whole area if you learn how to manage the microbes that live in your body. Okay, I'm going to go to a few of your questions. So, Grace, let's see here. I just got to make this a little bigger. Let's move this over here. So Grace shared, I believe pain and diseases caused by what you eat, all the chemicals in your food, and all the chemtrails, and all the fructose corn syrup. You started eating just fruits and salad, and you have no pain, and you slept great. Well, that's really great, Grace. All I know is that it's very good that you are changing your diet, but be careful with the fruit, because the parasites cause the inflammation. And yes, all of the toxins in our environment, especially what they're spraying in the sky, is absolutely a big concern. And we definitely do need to do heavy metal detoxes, but the parasites will thrive on the sugar from fruit also. And just to have fruit and salads, hopefully you're not just eating that alone, but have some animal protein too, because you need to have all the amino acids. You won't be able to get that just from salads, but definitely the salads are great, but be careful with the fruit. If you eat a lot of fruit, you'll find that you won't feel well, because your blood sugar will go up and down, and then you'll also be treating or feeding the parasites. And Ricky, so doesn't anyone see how all these MS patients have almost the same pathology of disease progression? You're seeing it. It's obvious now. It's totally obvious. And again, ask your neurologist. Just say, Why is it that we have so many disease modifying drugs? Like, if they work, then wouldn't we just need one or maybe two if you want to call relapsing, remitting, and progressive MS two different, which they're not. It's just that when you have progressive, you're more infested, your immune system is weaker, you're not getting the breaks. But let's say you want to humor them and call them two different diseases, then why would we need so many different drugs? And, if they worked, why do we have to take them forever? And they'll say, well, it's your immune system. Your immune system, you're different. You have a different immune system. And it's like, okay. So Tanya, only if that were true for HIV-1 people. So this is where I have heard from different people that have different viruses that if you correct your microbiome enough, you may find that the virus you're dealing with goes into remission. So that has happened, and that's what I personally would do if I was in that situation. What about EBV? I've done a talk on that. I've done a post on that. You can see Patty on our website. Just do EBV or Epstein-Barr virus and live disease-free, and you'll find it. And you'll see that the one study, the most recent study that was done, I think 2021, 2022, or in January, it was a very poorly done study. They took this huge cohort of, I think it was like military people, but out of that huge group, they looked at 35 people, and that's what they did the study on. And the truth of the matter is at least 96% of the general population tests positive for EBV. So if EBV, Epstein-Barr virus, was the cause of multiple sclerosis, and 96 or higher percent of the general population test positive for EBV, wouldn't we have a lot more MS? Wouldn't a lot of people have MS if EBV is the cause? So no, it's not the cause. They would just like to make some vaccines. All right. So the tinctures are stabilizing and improving your symptoms. That's awesome. And April, when my mother was young, her dad, my grandfather, used to have them take turpentine, yes, to deworm themselves. And that was in a rural area in the 1950s. So yes, turpentine is something that they used. If you're somebody who's healthy, but you might just have gas, constipation, a little bit of, not a lot of diarrhea, but your guts, you just know that they're not well, then something like turpentine could be helpful. But it's not the turpentine you get from a hardware store. It's an extract from a plant, and that can be helpful. But we have found that it is not enough on its own to treat the parasites we're dealing with. I've tried it. We've had students that have tried it before. But if you're a healthy person, you do periodic, there's all kinds of different things. I talked about the herbs, and there's also diatomaceous earth, and there's mimosa pudica. There's a lot of different more natural things you can do to prevent the parasites getting into the central nervous system. April, deworming used to be a big thing in the day. It was. I grew up on a farm, and there were 6 kids, and they would do that, but that was a long time ago. So, Ricky, I'm not interested in treating symptoms. You want a cure, and what I'm doing is not working, at least for me. So make sure you watch my masterclass training, Ricky, and make sure that you reach out to us if you need support. If you don't have a practitioner that will help you. In the masterclass training, I share all the steps that you need to take in order to recover. So you can do that with your practitioner. I'm just going to grab some water. So you can do that with your practitioner, but if you don't have a practitioner that will help you, then make sure to reach out because that's what we help you to do in the Live Disease-Free plan. April, we are our best advocates. Yes. Videos for doctors, I'm in. Awesome. Please reach out to us. And Bonnie, you can't believe how many things have fructose corn syrup in them. Yes, let's do it. That's awesome. And Grace, they have different names too. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm so glad you're doing this work, Pam. I took the course and I'm still implementing and I'm ready, or it's already been a couple of years. That is awesome. Oh, hi, John. So great to see you. And Grace, it's totally different. Amy. So the yes, mold is Amy, mold is definitely part of, and fungal issues can definitely be a part of it. There were many, many years that doctors thought that fungus caused MS and all chronic disease. But now what we're seeing is that the bigger parasites, they create a toxic environment, and mold loves to live in where there's a lot of debris and they're the recycler of the world. So when you take away the bigger parasites and you take away because the bigger parasites, they infect us with smaller parasites and bacteria, and that bacteria dies, and fungus loves to live off of the recycling, right? So just by focusing on fungus, we're not going to get well. That was back in the 1980s. There's a few doctors that were really focused on fungus. If you've lived in a moldy environment, it can absolutely make you sick. The mycotoxins are some of the most deadly toxins in the world, and they can make you weaker and more susceptible to all different types of parasites. So they have to be addressed, and we always do address them as part of the parasites, but they're not the only ones, and we don't get better with just only treating those. Okay, last couple. And yes, there's some smaller parasites in the blood. And so they cause a lot of inflammation in our veins. And even the oxidizing agents can be really helpful for that. All right, there's lots of great comments. Just make sure you just type your questions in, and our team will definitely answer your questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to let you guys go, but I just wanted to share with you that I just want to thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I would like to just encourage you to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy what I share every week. Help us to get the word out. Like, get the discussions going in different groups about parasites. Get people thinking about this, because again, people are searching, and many of them have never heard that parasites could be the cause of what they're dealing with. And then if you need support, make sure to reach out, watch my masterclass training. And at the end of the week, I will have all of my notes condensed on a post on livediseasefree.com, and the video will be shortened there. And share that with people. Share that with your doctors. I'm getting some amazing healthcare professionals reaching out to me from all over the world, and they're really excited about this, especially if they're sick. It really helps them because they know they can't get well with standard of care. So I hope you have a wonderful week, and we will talk to you next week. Take care and bye-bye for now.